It's 2 a.m., January 1st, year 2000. Power's out. It's pitch black. You need light. If you planned ahead, you'll have one of these. Just wind it up. You'll have light and communication. Call now and get the ultimate Y2K survival kit from BeCalm.com. You'll receive the Sunburst, the premier wind-up and solar-powered flashlight and radio, a video resource guide with real advice from leading experts, a diagnostic computer program to test your PC. You'll receive 3 soup samples from Hourglass Foods, food storage you'll want to eat. Plus, you'll receive a step-by-step guide that will show you how to prepare without wasting a single penny.
Call now and order your ultimate Y2K survival kit. You get the wind-up and solar-powered flashlight radio, video diagnostic software, food samples and preparation guide, a $90 value, all for only $49.95. Call 1-800-38747 now and tell the operator to rush an ultimate Y2K survival kit to your home. Call now.
Terry, as you and Pat have already said, more and more experts are warning that the year 2000 could bring a date with disaster. First, a brief explanation. This crisis is often called Y2K. What does that mean? Well, Y is short for year, 2 of course means 2, and K is the scientific symbol for thousand. So Y2K is simply short for year 2000. But what is the basis of the problem, and why are experts so worried? CBN News reporter Chris Mitchell explains.
It's been called the world's most important extermination job, eliminating the year 2000 computer bug.
It's just an extremely serious and extremely dangerous situation.
The dangerous situation is a simple problem, but it's nearly everywhere. When the computing era began, computer memory was very, very expensive. So to save money, computer programmers used only 2 digits to identify a year, like 97, 98, and so on. But the problem is that when the year 1999 turns to 2000, many computers and computer chips around the world will think it's 1900, not 2000. Because of this, many computers will behave unpredictably, malfunction, or simply crash.
It affects virtually every facet of modern life. So wherever you look, whether we're talking in terms of banking or transportation, communications, trade, just all kinds of dimensions, you can point to year 2000 consequences, because underlying all of these various facets of modern life are computers and software.
The situation began over 40 years ago when we built our economy and our way of life on the computer and the computer chip. It brought us the information revolution.
Today, an information revolution is changing dramatically the face of business and the fabric of society in the United States.
Corey Hamasaki, a computer software engineer for nearly 30 years, has witnessed most of this information revolution. He's an expert on large mainframe computers, the ones that still run much of our civilization.
My assessment is that the work is not being done. And the consequence of that is that the systems will fail and the essentials won't be available sometime after the year 2000. That's deliveries of fuel, electricity, transportation, communication systems. I feel that all of those things are at risk.
Added to the software problem is the risk of embedded computer chips. There's an estimated 25 to 40 billion of these in the world, running everything from super tankers to traffic lights. And they're used in machines throughout factories, the phone system, utilities like power, water, and gas. They're virtually everywhere. Some estimate 1 to 10% of these embedded chips will fail. And that could cause those factories, phone systems, and so on to fail. What compounds the impact of the year 2000 computer problem is the interdependency of our economy. One part affects the other.
It's a completely connected system, a system of systems. And if one part of it fails, none of it works.
For example, we all depend on electricity from power plants. The power plants depend on the railroads. The railroads depend on telecommunications. Telecommunications depend on power plants. They all depend on computers, If one or more parts fail, they're like technological dominoes rippling throughout the economy. In the year 2000, every sector could suffer simultaneously. Last year's UPS strike is only a very minor example of what could happen. The impact of the 15-day strike by UPS cascaded throughout the country and affected thousands of businesses.
It's going to have a terrible effect on our business.
The auto industry is another example of interdependency and the year 2000 problem. The big three car makers are working hard to fix their computers and computer chips, but they depend on many suppliers. GM alone has 100,000 suppliers worldwide. If one supplier fails to be ready for the year 2000, it could shut down the entire assembly line. Stephen Davis sees the interdependency of local governments. He's working on the year 2000 problem for Montgomery County in Maryland.
Everything's interdependent. We all rely on suppliers who rely on suppliers. Many of them are using just-in-time inventory, which of course has a risk to it. But everybody depends on power. Everybody depends on public transportation to get people to and from work. At the county government level and city government, it's where the rubber hits the road in terms of government services. People rely on us for health care in some instances, public safety, police and fire protection. They depend on us to have the traffic lights turn off and on at the right time. So there's a lot that we're responsible for, and that's why we're looking at it so closely.
From town hall to the assembly line, this complex but fragile supply chain brings us nearly everything we depend on. Like the supply chain that leads from oil rigs to your local gas pump, this chain runs on computers and computer chips that need to be fixed by the year 2000. Many describe the situation like this. We've spent 30 to 40 years building this computerized system. Now we have only 18 months left to fix it. The scope and complexity of the year 2000 problem concerns many.
What we've noticed is the longer someone works on the year 2000 problem and the more involved and the more research they do, the more concerned they become.
Bruce Webster chairs the Washington, D.C. year 2000 group. The group includes people from the government, military, business, and other sectors of society trying to fix the problem. Webster recently published a survey of what this group expects the impact of the year 2000 problem to be on the United States.
The results are that 85% of those responding feel that at a minimum we're going to have a 20% adjustment in the Dow and some bankruptcies due to this. That's a fairly significant impact and actually exceeds a lot of what other people outside the Y2K arena have felt.
The survey also reported 56% believe the year 2000 problem will at the least result in a mild recession and some runs on banks. 34% believe it will at least result in a strong recession, local social disruptions, and many business bankruptcies. And 10% believe the United States will suffer another depression or worse. Few expect the world to stop on January 1, 2000, but the many disruptions to the economy could affect us all, like thousands of Lilliputians tying down this Gulliver of an economy. Then why not just fix the computers? Despite the billions of dollars already being spent by government and business, there's simply not enough manpower and time to fix the problem. That's why many believe the human element, not technology, may be the most important part of the solution to the year 2000 problem.
In the end, it's not the technology, it's the human factors. It's how people choose to act and react. It's the leadership we have, and it is the how people will behave in the event there are interruptions in power, in supplies, in everyday life. What will they choose to do? That is what is most important and what people need to focus on.
With less than 600 days before the year 2000, the question remains, how will Americans and the world respond? Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Pat, the situation is so severe that one top business leader recently warned that, quote, "In my own view, it is a particularly large global disaster in the making. I am convinced the problem is vastly underappreciated." That was Jerry Jasanowski of the National Association of Manufacturers.
You're watching Sleepcore, Pleasant dreams.
I got the latest, greatest music with 24 days to go. A book on Eastern tunics with 23 days to go. I picked up all the hottest toys, a digital camera I enjoy. Finished all my shopping with 21 days to go.
Now, thanks to Amazon.com,
I'm sucking down the eggnog with 20 days to go. Practicing my yoga with 19 days to go. Nothing else to do today but worry about Y2K. Soaking in a bubble bath with 15 days to go.
Well, since this Y2K computer bug is going to plunge our civilization into an era of complete and utter darkness, it makes sense to see the light at Motel 6 before it's too late. That way you can enjoy the apocalypse from your clean, comfortable room as the world outside crumbles and comes to an end. Or not. Call 1-800...
Water you want to store will depend on how many people are in your family. And keep in mind, you'll need some water for cooking and cleaning.
Everyone should have 14 gallons of water stored within their living area and then have a device to be able to treat the water they can find. 14 gallons of water, a gallon a day for 2 weeks. Do the math. 28 gallons for a husband and wife or for a couple, and etc. It's so simple. Anyone can do it. The neat thing about it is it's not expensive, but it's so practical and so prudent to be prepared for water. It's an absolute basic.
Water's a critical resource. All of us need it. 3 to 5 days without it and we're dead. Again, people can store it incrementally. My family started by taking the 2-liter Coke bottles, rinsing them out, refilling them with tap water, and putting 4 drops of Clorox in them, screwing them tight, putting them in a dark place, and stockpiling them incrementally as we went along.
One of the best ways to store water is to do it a little at a time. Instead of purchasing cans of soda, buy your favorite drink in the 2-liter bottles. Clean them thoroughly after use, then fill them with tap water and replace the twist-on lid tightly. Just about all the tap water in America is highly processed and chlorinated before it gets to your house. But since you don't know how long the stored water will have to last, adding 2 or 3 drops of Clorox to each container isn't a bad idea. Also, fill the bottle right to the top. The less air in the bottle, the less chance of contamination. And by the way, the gallon juice containers are excellent for water storage. They are, in fact, designed to hold liquids for extended periods. The next question, of course, is where do you store it?
Let's go over some practical steps for the average person in their home. Your home has a number of reservoirs that you don't even realize you have. Sinks, bathtubs, water heaters. The average home in America has a 40-gallon water heater. If you have a family of 4, your water heater now represents 10 days worth of potable drinking water.
Finding the space to store water may be easier than you think. Try taking a quick inventory of unused space in your home. In the back of closets, underneath the bed, the shelves in the garage where you've been saving empty boxes. All make excellent water storage areas. One other thing. In some areas, a nearby stream may afford a reliable source of water. But keep in mind that even if your grandmother got all her water from a stream, your intestinal system has built up different immunities. And quite likely the stream contains different impurities. Keep Clorox, iodine crystals, or water purification tablets on hand and treat all natural water before consuming it, because even boiling may not be a viable option. Remember,
everybody has to drink water. Everyone should have 14 gallons of water, a gallon a day for 2 weeks. It's an absolute basic.
That brings us to the second of the most important basic needs items, food. But just having something that says food on the label may not be enough. Nobody wants to go hungry if they can help it, so storing food is a major priority. But just like storing water, there are a few things you need to know to store food successfully.
The second most important thing we need to have stored is food. In whatever increment of time that we can afford. Some people can only afford another day, an extra week, some maybe a month or 2, or up to a year. People should be able to produce food at home, whether it's canning, freezing, bottling, growing their own food, producing their own food in the backyard, canning it at a local cannery or whatever. But food is so important, obviously, to our long-term life. And the rule for being prepared for having enough food to live on is to store what you normally eat. Eat what you store and use it or lose it.
When it comes to food, people really need to be stockpiling now. and they need to do it incrementally. It may be as simple as going to the grocery store, throwing a few extra canned goods into the shopping cart, and beginning to stockpile that in advance of January the 1st, 2000.
Let's say your average family shopping list consists of 2 pounds of beans, 2 pounds of rice, and 2 pounds of pasta every week, just theoretically. Well, next week, instead of buying 2 pounds of beans, buy 3 pounds of beans, 2 pounds of pasta, 2 pounds of rice, and put the extra pound away as storage. Then the next week, buy an extra pound of rice. The next week, buy an extra pound of pasta. Then start to buy some canned goods, and you'll be surprised within the next 5 to 6 months how much extra food you will have put away in your pantry.
That sounds like a relatively painless and prudent thing to do, but will your friends accuse you of hoarding?
Sometimes people wonder if stockpiling food is the same as hoarding food. Stockpiling is what we do when we have a lot of resources and there's a very small demand. Hoarding is what happens when we've got a lot of demand and very few resources. In fact, hoarding is what happens to people who don't stockpile. So I encourage people to stockpile now.
Some of the weird things that I've heard and experienced in this industry are people who will rush out and buy a year's supply of dried foods, against which I have no feelings. I have a lot of it myself. But they rush out and buy a year's supply of dried foods they've never tasted before, have no clue how to fix. And they're going to put it in their basement for 15 years, hoping that they never need it.
It's important to make your choices now, while you are in control of the situation. If you delay or just flat out avoid making the hard decisions, someone else is likely to make them for you. There aren't many rules to follow when it comes to food storage, but it's good to know what rules there are, because not knowing or not following the rules could cost you your life. Let me illustrate rule number 1 with a story. In the winter of 1983-84 in Utah, record snowfall drove the deer herds down out of the mountains and literally into people's backyards searching for food. Well-meaning farmers and conservationists put out hundreds of bales of hay for the animals, which they quickly devoured. But the people were shocked when the deer literally starved to death with their bellies full of hay. The animals were used to feeding on oak, maple, and bitterbush. Their systems simply couldn't process the hay. Rule number 1, don't buy what you don't eat, or what you are unwilling to work into your regular meals. If you choose to buy dehydrated or freeze-dried foods, for example, start working these foods into your regular diet immediately. If you are unwilling to do that, don't make them part of your storage program. Rule number 2, remind yourself that you don't have to do it all at once. All you have to do is begin and continue from. Rule number 3, know what you must have for a week, a month, a year. Just buying stuff is a waste of goods and money. Finding out what you need as opposed to what you think you want will take a little study, but it's worth it. Rule number 4 is simply do it now. That doesn't mean rush out to the store and fill up the back of the van. It simply means begin to implement your plan today and to build your own personal in-home convenience store incrementally. And once you have what you need, begin a program of use and replace. Use the things in your storage for your meals and shop to replace what you use. But even if your food storage is adequate and in place, if there's an extended power outage, you face a whole new set of problems. Will you have an alternate source of light? And what should that be? Do you know where to go for a safe alternative to heating your home if there's no fuel for your furnace and no electricity to turn the fan? How will you get information? What about stores and banks? Can you protect your financial situation? What else should you know before the...
Hey, come on! With just moments before the new millennium, the dreaded Y2K bug still threatens worldwide bank disruption and computer failure.
Introducing Polaroid Pop Shots, the 10-shot, one-time use instant camera. Polaroid Pop Shots. See what develops.
Midnight on December 31st, this is what could happen. No TV, no transportation, no electricity. All right. Trojan condoms, the most trusted for a most happy new year.
You're watching Sleepcore, media for insomnia.
We both enjoy and are awestruck by the unbelievably rapid advancements in human ingenuity and technology. Yet, how fragile do we now find ourselves before the juggernaut of our own inventions? However, as we indicated earlier in this program, there are no Y2K experts. No one knows exactly what, if anything, will happen. And our individual and collective response to Y2K is actually far more important than Y2K itself.
The experts that we're dealing with indicate that it's going to hit hard and heavy for a while, maybe look like what some are calling a meltdown scenario for a week or two, and then it's going to level out more to brown out.
On a scale of 1 to 5, how bad the Y2K is going to be globally, 5 being the worst, I would say globally they're at a 5. In the States, we have been at a 4. I think we're going to end up about a 2.
My personal sense of this is in the range of 3. I think there are going to be major disruptions. I think there are going to be things that we can deal with, but it won't be easy.
Putting January 1 on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the worst and 1 being nothing at all, my assumption is somewhere around a 2.5. Again, an annoyance, a nuisance, a lot of different things that don't work. Catastrophic? I don't think so.
I would say a 3.
I think maybe we're looking at maybe a 3. I think based on the utility companies, I think there will be some power outages, or we'll have brownouts in some cases.
I would say that it would probably fall around a 3 or a 4.
My personal opinion is it can only be a 5. It can't be any less than a 5.
I would probably have to rate this right in the middle at 2.5. And the reason is because we know that this is an inevitable circumstance.
I would put the year 2000 problem for the world at a 3 with a wait-and-see attitude.
In a very real way, we're all responsible for Y2K, and there's no one to blame, morally or otherwise. We've all benefited from the technologies which have improved our lives, and we have therefore encouraged those same technologies to develop at ever more accelerated rates. And yes, perhaps we are now realizing that we've taken them a bit for granted and have indeed become too dependent upon the byproducts of our collective innovations. And so, we must not only prepare as families and work together as neighbors, but we need also use this moment in the development of our civilization as an opportunity to look at the long-range effects of all our human endeavors. Looking beyond Y2K, whatever perils our very human ambitions and short-sightedness may lead us to, our even more powerful human spirit will find a way to overcome. So, let us use the Y2K challenge as an opportunity to reflect on where we're headed as a civilization. Perhaps the most important opportunity we've ever had. If the omission of 2 simple digits can have worldwide impact several decades after its inception, we must ask ourselves, before we rush too far forward, what are we doing now in genetic engineering, with cloning, with the development of bacteriological warfare life forms, with death ray technologies, and pollution of land, air, and water that could have long-term, unpredictable worldwide effects? And what can we do as the inheritors, the caretakers of this world? What can we do to protect our home, our island in space?
Good evening. You're looking live at Times Square in New York, where a massive crowd has been gathered since early this morning, waiting patiently for the stroke of midnight, now less than 6 hours away, signaling the dawn of a new year, a new century, a new millennium in the United States. The traditional ball, this year made of Waterford crystal, will drop at the stroke of midnight, and the celebration will begin here as it has been going on all day around the world, celebrations of beauty and hope. New Year's Eve, 1999, the dawn of the first morning of a new millennium beginning in the Pacific. In more than 120 countries around the world, it is already the new year 2000. In Moscow, surprising news from the Kremlin: Boris Yeltsin resigns as president. And end of the Millennium jitters, computers, national security, banking, and health. At this moment, all is well. And here in New York, Times Square, the final countdown to midnight, 8,000 police officers among the crowd of an expected 2 million.
This is a special edition of NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, reporting live from Times Square.
Good evening. In more than half the world tonight, it is a new day, a new century, the beginning of a new millennium. And so far, it has been a joyful, peaceful, and largely trouble-free transition as time now sweeps toward the eastern shores of North America. It began early this morning in the Pacific in large ways and small. Sydney, Australia, showing why it is one of the cities of the future. Hong Kong, now a part of China, but a city with its own distinctive identity, combining the modern and the traditional. Bangkok, Thailand, where the ancient past and present and future came together in a pageant of dragon dancers and delicate beauty. Moscow, the Russians gathering outside the fortress of the Kremlin to ponder a new century and a new president with the resignation of Boris Yeltsin. Rome, the eternal city, St. Peter's Square, where Pope John Paul, frail at 79, but the Holy Father had praise and admonitions for the faithful. And back here in Times Square in New York, the granddaddy of America's New Year celebrations, where more than 500,000 people gathered early this morning, and they have been filling this square all day long. We expect the crowd could be as large as 2 million by the time midnight arrives. It's worth reminding each other that none of us will ever see anything quite like this again. The calendar turning to another 1,000 years. And as NBC's Jim Maseda tells us tonight from London, everyone wanted to be in on it. Jim?
Tom, long before most Americans even got up today, people elsewhere were marking their millennium in their way.
19 time zones from New York City, the islanders of Kiribati in the South Pacific. A village elder hands a burning torch to a young boy, a symbol of continuity.
Take this torch of peace and hope from Kiribati.
This, the first New Year celebration on the planet. Only 18 minutes later, on Chatham Island off New Zealand, a new life for Monique and Dean, perhaps the first bride and groom of the third millennium. And the first baby? 6 were born in the first 20 minutes of New Zealand's New Year. Meet Otupu Ketuani, the millennium's first girl. As the year 2000 sweeps across the globe, celebrations take on many faces. Chairman Jiang Zemin leads his nation in festivities in Beijing, while across town, 2,000 Chinese couples tie the knot, one of thousands of mass weddings across continents today. From the cast iron bell struck 108 times, the traditional Buddhist start of the new year in Tokyo, to the less conventional 100-foot bungee jump in the town where the jump was invented, Queenstown, New Zealand. Even at the site of Egypt's Giza pyramids, truly millennial mix of old and new, a 12-hour laser show. In Athens, the ancient Acropolis alight, where past and future merge. In Cape Town, former South African President Nelson Mandela passing his torch to a new generation, returning to his prison of 18 years on Robben Island. And Germans in Berlin, marking their millennium at Brandenburg Gate, the very spot where only 10 years ago a wall divided them, east and west, and the world.
And it still won't be New Year's for the people way out in the west in French Polynesia for another 11 hours. This party is far from over. Tom?
Thanks very much, NBC Jim Maseda tonight. Now let's go to France, where New Year's celebrations have been muted somewhat by a week of deadly weather throughout that country. But in Paris, the festivities did go on as planned, and NBC's Donna Friesen is in the heart of the French capital and joins us now. Donna?
And Tom, the City of Lights certainly lived up to its reputation. I'm above the Champs-Élysées, which is now a mile-long sea of lights, of music, of people, of Ferris wheels. But of course, the focus, the highlight, was about half an hour ago at the Eiffel Tower. It shimmered, it glowed, it erupted, it was dressed in lights and fireworks that 20 mountain climbers miles of lights, a cost of $2.6 million. The goal was to create an illusion of the Eiffel Tower blasting off, and then moments later along the Champs-Élysées, a number of Ferris wheels began spinning in unison. They're not rides so much as works of art designed to create the illusion of a train moving down the Champs-Élysées, bringing France into the next century, into the next millennium. So, Tom, there was massive security in place here tonight, but so far everything has gone very smoothly in Paris.
Thanks very much, NBC's Donna Friesen tonight on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. But the most stunning news of the day did come from Moscow early with the surprise announcement from Boris Yeltsin that he's resigning as president and turning over power to his prime minister, Vladimir Putin. The transfer has been peaceful. Elections are scheduled in 3 months. But there's much more to this story than just the surprise. And NBC's Dana Lewis is in Moscow tonight. Dana, what's the latest there?
Well, Tom, Boris Yeltsin chose the last day of the year to drop a political bombshell.
Midnight in Moscow, not only the beginning of a new century, but the beginning of a new political era. It was high noon during his New Year's Eve address when Boris Yeltsin made his stunning announcement he would resign as president effective immediately.
I am stepping down ahead of term. I understand I must do it, and Russia must enter the new millennium with new politicians, new faces, and with new, intelligent, strong, energetic people.
Yeltsin, who had only 6 months remaining in his term in office, named Vladimir Putin as acting president. The 47-year-old Putin, a former KGB agent and then an intelligence official, had little political experience until he was tapped as prime minister just 3 months ago. And now, soon after Yeltsin's announcement, Putin was given the briefcase with the launch codes that control Russia's nuclear arsenal. Why did Yeltsin step down? Chronic health problems, his heart, ulcers, and bouts with pneumonia have kept him off the job. And there are questions about whether Yeltsin and his family use their power and influence to financial kickbacks. In fact, today, one of Putin's first moves, a guarantee of immunity from criminal prosecution for Yeltsin and his family. As for the man who impressed the world when he stood on a tank in 1991 to protect democracy, today he apologized to Russians for disappointing them in the last few difficult years.
I want to beg your forgiveness for your dreams that never came true.
Then he waved goodbye to spend New Year's Eve alone with his family.
In a midnight speech, Putin here let everyone know that he is very much in charge. He says he won't tolerate anyone attempting to undermine his authority. He is considered to be a formidable candidate, tough to beat in the upcoming presidential election in March. Tom?
Thanks very much, NBC's Dana Lewis tonight in Moscow. At the White House tonight, the President, the First Lady, and Chelsea Clinton are hosting a Millennium dinner that is being called a salute to American achievement. Along with the usual Washington notables are many celebrities. All of them are lining up at this hour to shake the hands of their hosts. Earlier in the day, the Clinton administration was crafting its response to the news of Boris Yeltsin's sudden departure from the Kremlin and looking forward, it said, to working with the new man in charge, Prime Minister Vladimir Putin.
Another essential service that some citizens may be concerned about Y2K impact would be our traffic signals. The city's traffic signal equipment is Y2K compliant. Additionally, although the central computer and software located at City Hall will function normally after January 1st, the department already had upgraded its software program. This has been completed and will correct a non-safety related traffic count. Of all the essential services we receive questions about, I believe the question we're most often asked has to do with the provision of electricity after the year 2000. Murfreesboro Electric does not provide its own electricity. It purchases all of its power from TVA. As a result, the Murfreesboro Electric Department has closely monitored the status of TVA's Y2K compliance efforts. TVA has completed its Y2K analysis and has certified all of its mission-critical operations to be Y2K compliant. In fact, TVA is already running its computers in the year 2000 mode. We anticipate absolutely no problems related to the provision of electricity to our customers, either through problems associated with TVA or Murfreesboro Electric. We want to again reassure our community that both TVA and MED are ready for Y2K. While the city of Murfreesboro has been very aggressive in planning for Y2K, we do not want to take anything for granted. We have developed a contingency plan that actually includes 2 waves. The first wave has to do with the activation of our Emergency Operations Center, December 31st. Again, this is just regular precaution that we're exercising. Key staff personnel in departments that provide emergency services will have additional staff on duty that day, as well as those department heads actually being present at our Emergency Operations Center, so that in the unlikely event the city can very quickly begin to handle any issues. The second wave of our contingency plan will really occur the next morning. We will ask all of our departments to come to work, to test all of their computer systems, to again make absolutely sure that we have experienced no problems. Additionally, the city of Murfreesboro has been in close communication with Rutherford County, Middle Tennessee Medical Center, and other communities in Middle Tennessee, so that we can have a coordinated effort again should any unexpected problems occur.
Hello. My name is Robert Mullins. I am the mayor for the town of Smyrna. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you what we have done to prepare for Y2K. First, I would make a point. We must have electricity. Locally, Middle Tennessee Electric Membership Corporation has assured us that they will do everything they can to furnish this electricity. Second, I would share with you that our directors have worked with our vendors and suppliers to certify pagers, radios, telephones, computers, etc., to be sure that they are ready for Y2K time. Most of our computers have been updated with Windows 98 and with the Pentium processing. During the past 12 months, the Fire and Police Department have installed a new radio and dispatch system. They are prepared. Also, there has been a new water treatment plant built with the latest technology for processing our water. With this expansion, our storage is now approximately 10 million gallons. Our usage is less than this per day. This means with full production, we would have 1 day's use. If industry should be out of production, we could stretch this to maybe even a week. If for some reason the local industry could not produce, we could still stretch then to approximately 1 week from this storage. Our operators have assured us that storage will be full on the night of December 31st. I want to assure the citizens of Smyrna that staff has taken every precaution to assure that the operation of the town of Smyrna will be as usual. I wish each of you a happy holiday season.
You're watching Sleepcore. Sleep tight.
Students in their war against the bug. Fox 11's Kenny Bass explains tonight.
They are the first line of defense against the Y2K bug for classroom computers in Kanawha County. High school students are checking each machine to make sure it will work properly when the year 2000 rolls around.
I think we all need to work together, and I think it's just great that we all can do that to help with the Y2K issue. I don't think there's any way that the teachers themselves with teaching in a classroom could do all this.
The students are being paid for their work, which also includes checking hard drives for viruses and scanning disks for defects. And although they've run into Y2K problems at every school, they say they're surprised at the small amount of trouble they've uncovered.
Well, I didn't quite know what exactly to expect, but actually I did think that we'd have more problems than we actually have been having.
The students say they're thankful to have landed this type of job to fill up their summer months.
This is great. I mean, I'm just hoping this will lead into something better I can do, like once I graduate in the future. I mean, working at fast food, that leads nowhere. I plan on going into a career as a computer technician, and so it's helping me to learn how to get into the computer more and make it do what I want to do.
In Dunbar, Kenny Bass, Fox 11, News at 10.
And Kenny reports students must check every classroom computer in the county, have it Y2K compliant and virus-free by August 20th. That sounds like just around the corner, but supervisors say
we have left. We're going to go back to the command center of America Online now, because ABC's Jack Smith has been there all this time, Jack, and I have to tell you, to be perfectly honest, I thought you'd gone home. Please don't take that as a defense, but what's been happening there? We were asking the chairman of AOL a little early on about internet traffic this year, and he said he thought it was up. What's actually happened in terms of communications through the internet in the last 24 hours?
Well, the word here from AOL is Y2K. Okay. No news is good news. Nothing really has happened here. They anticipated, just to make sure, they anticipated that things could go wrong, so we've been on generator power here, not the local electrical company, but generator power here for a number of hours, just in case something happened. Well, it didn't happen. Now, if you look behind me, you can see the operations center. This is where all the traffic of the 20 million subscribers to AOL, the world's largest internet company. This is where it's monitored, and you can see, if you look on the back, you see those graphs there. You can see that they dip down sharply, and in some cases they pop back up. That's when the midnight happened on the East Coast, and people would log off of their computers, log off of the internet, so that they could kiss their wives and wish everybody around them Happy New Year. And then some of them have been logging back on. But as you can see, traffic is pretty low, and this is typical for this time of year. The slowest night of the year, we're told, on the internet is Christmas Eve, and the second slowest night is New Year's Eve. For obvious reasons, people have other things to do. Well, normally, this building normally has about 700 employees. There are 200 or so working tonight, and that's an unusual number. Normally, they would be far, far fewer than that. As you can see, this is pretty well staffed here, and that's unusual. They were worried that something might happen, as we all were, but nothing did.
Jack, I apologize for having kept you so long today. Have you, the only ironic Y2K computer glitch that I am aware of is having to do with the web page of the official timekeeper, the atomic clock. Have you heard that?
No, I didn't hear that.
Well, I'll come to that in a second rather than make you just stand there. But have there been any glitches throughout the internet system as best you can tell today?
No. It's been remarkably quiet as the new millennium has moved from New Zealand and across the Pacific and so on. We've been watching the internet. A number of AOL subscribers are overseas, and there have been absolutely no anomalies. No anomalies at all.
Answer one question for us then before you go home to a much deserved rest. It's the question I think all of us ask as we increasingly get involved with email. How secure ultimately are our emails as we communicate with each other around the world on an occasion like this?
They're not as secure as you think they are. Email, you have to assume when you send an email that the whole world can read it. It's not secure like mail is. At least you can seal an envelope and you can see if it's been steamed open, and most people, very few people, bother to steam open your mail. Email's a little different. People can read it, and almost anyone can certainly tell that you've sent email and where it's gone to. Email is a very different animal.
Jack, thanks very much for a very long day. I do apologize. Thanks very much. Happy New Year to you. It was great to talk to your father earlier today. On the subject of websites, this computer glitch story is that the official timekeeper, the atomic clock in Washington, which has a website, early on, just because of a slight glitch, reported the date as 19,100 during the earliest hours of the new year, according to the Associated Press. The Naval Observatory, that is, where the master clock in Washington serves as the nation's official source of time, had a glitch on its website. But that's about the only one that we know that has occurred throughout this day in many, many parts of the world. To Las Vegas to look at the dancing fountains.